What a difference a week can make. Going from is his dominance on clay over all the way to 2019 French Open Roland Garros number one favorite, Rafa Nadal. He's done it in less than a freaking week. Today on the show, of course, we'll talk about Rafa's big accomplishment and we'll talk about the French Open implications. Stefanos Tsitsipas is quickly flying up the rankings again, week after week, going up and up and up and putting more pressure on one man than anyone else. And that is, of course, Sasha Zverev. We'll see what he's doing to try to make up the difference. And Nick Kyrgios says, the French Open, it sucks. All that on today's Coffee Break Tennis. So you may have heard this. A bunch of people have been saying stuff like this, comparing, when you've won the French Open more than 10 times, 11 times, it's pretty easy to just pick a year and compare it to this year and say, well, Rafa did better in the lead up this year than that year, and he won that year, therefore he shall win this year. So, of course, we've heard a lot of people making those kind of statements, equivocations. Anyways, Brad Gilbert, an opinion we all respect, interview with Tennis Now says, if you go back to 2014, Rafa didn't play invincible in Monte Carlo or Barcelona, and he still won Paris. So I think it's most important that he's peaking for Paris. You can have an amazing clay court season and win everything, but if you don't win the French, it's not as great of a season. And then he has a great comparison from his, he used to coach Agassi, so we can always pull things from the history book, from he's a commentator forever. He can pull things from any part of the tennis history book, but especially here, if Rafa doesn't win any lead-up tournaments and he wins Paris, it's like what Pete Sampras did at the 95 Open. Agassi won 26 in a row, but that doesn't win the Open. So Agassi, big win streak in 95, but Pete Sampras doesn't pick up any titles and wins the U.S. Open, the only one that matters. We did the big tournament thing recently where I said, look, Djokovic is almost catching Roger in big tournaments. He's only one behind. But really, he's not. He's 5 behind. And it doesn't look like he's going to win the French Open, although many are saying he is a favorite. So I just want to point that out. It's important that we all remember, if you are Fabio Fognini, winning Monte Carlo is your career highlight. If you are Roger, Rafa, Joker, even 1% Andy Murray, who looks like he's more than 1% on his way to coming back, but I wouldn't go too far past it. We'll talk about that later. If you're one of those guys, the Masters, they're very nice. I recently said they're 5% of a major, and some people commented below that I'm crazy. And I think I saw someone say it's actually 10%. That's a fair number, and I thought, okay. Or maybe they said 20. I don't even know about 20 because I think most players would trade in their 5 Masters titles for one major at any of them, even the French Open, which of course sucks, according to Nick Kyrgios. So remember, back to my main point, you big 4 guys, or Stefanos Tsitsipas, I'm sure he'd love to win a Masters, but to me he seems like a big 4 type attitude. Right now, we'll see if he can hold that nerve for further years. If you're one of those guys, these tournaments are warm-ups. They're all about peaking for the majors. It's always been that way, and it will remain that way, even if they make a thing called the ATP Cup. Won't change nothing. Which they did. I was going to talk about that on today's show, but we have no time today. So when I'm always like, we're going to try to rush, today we have to rush. So we'll talk about ATP Cup. This will be a light week. We'll probably be back Thursday to talk about the French Open draw, of course. Well, we'll definitely be back. We'll have a draw show. And maybe we'll talk about ATP Cup then. It is a little confusing. It's basically like the countries that get in are the top singles players. So your top 10 automatically get in, unless you're Greece, because you need to have 3 players in the not top 100, just need to be ranked. Stefanos is the only player from Greece right now, male player, with ATP rankings points. So I guess that means they're disqualified. Seems kind of crazy. Then again, though, how do they compete without any other players? Needs to get his little brother Petros to get some points again. He used to have points. Get some more points, Petros. So circling back to my big stupid point, because it took too long to say it again. Let me say it one more time. These tournaments are more like, for the big guys, for the guys who can win a major, it's just a place for you to get your game where it needs to be in time. Again, you don't have to win them because you have to peak for the major. And it's really just a fun way for us as the tennis fans to see what players are working on and where they are currently at as they get better and better right before the major. Rafa's done it perfect this year. You could argue, and I know I was one of the people that said, look, I'm worried about Rafa because it's got to be so hard for him to keep coming back from injury. Clearly, he's done it well enough here to look like he can win the French Open. I mean, giving a bagel to everyone in a Masters 1000. And again, can't stress enough how this court plays the most similar to the French Open of any clay court on the tour. I mean, Rafa couldn't have planned this better. Is this ideally the way he would have wanted it at the beginning of the clay court season? Of course not. Is he happy with things as they stand now? I bet you Rafa is very happy, but he's also muy serio, very serio. Much more work to be done. Which, of course, that's how Rafa would do this. Did he say anything else interesting? He says Djokovic is trying for the second Joker Slam. Doesn't matter what happened if he gets right now wins Paris. Basically, Brad Gilbert's pointing out that if Djokovic can hold all 4 majors, came flying back. If Joker can hold all 4 majors twice in his career, he doesn't say it, but BG says, that has GOAT implications for the long-term GOAT debate. All right, Greg Ruzetsky says Dominic Thiem is a 3rd favorite. Stefanos Tsitsipas is also a part of the party. I think he says he's pretty much 4th favorite or 5th, which is pretty amazing considering no one knew who this guy was a year ago. I mean, well, we would have known because he played Rafa in Barcelona last year, but he was pretty fresh on most people. I mean, of course, I knew who he was. Of course, you very likely knew who he was. If you're watching the show, you are part of the highest tennis IQ tennis fans crowd in the world. So, of course, we knew. But most casual observers of our great sport, tennis, probably didn't know who Stefanos was a year ago. So for him to be in the party of people who could win the French Open, coming from Greg Ruzetsky, Amazon Prime bot, it's quite an accomplishment, Stefanos. Stefanos. City Pass. For me, the joint favorite is Djoko and Nadal. Joint favorite. Nadal's ahead. A bagel and a breadstick. Djokovic had to fight for his breadstick. For a guy who has a gluten intolerance, he fought very hard to eat that big, long breadstick. Is that? Oh, my. I don't want that to sound as horrible as it sounds. You know what I mean. The guy, he put in a lot of work to have a nice, tasty, maybe it was a gluten-free. We'll have to check with Rafa. Maybe that was a gluten. Maybe Rafa brings his bag of bagels to a match, and when he plays Joker, he knows, okay, I got to make sure I bring the gluten-free bagels and breadsticks bag with me in my bag. Tennis bag with a bag. Oh, my God. Moving on. Joint favorite, Joker and Nadal. Nadal announced himself. Before this match, I was putting Djokovic as a slight favorite ahead of Rafa. I was not going to do that, even though I was worried about Rafa, but every tournament he gets better, and you just kind of feeling he had a real shot at winning Rome. As soon as we saw the first couple, Thursday, where Rafa put up a bagel and a breadstick twice in one day. I mean, I said it. Rafa's going to blaze through the draw now. I don't think I specified. I don't think I specifically said that Rafa's going to stick it to Joker. But when I said bagels para todos, I was really talking about Stefanos, who impressively, what do you say about that? Djokovic gets a bagel and a breadstick. Stefanos, he might as well have been gluten-free. Got to credit the guy again. So Greg Ruzetsky was so bold as to put Djokovic ahead of Rafa at the French Open this year until he saw that match. He says Tsitsipas is coming to the party. He's a guy we didn't think was going to step up this quickly. Also, in the last podcast, I said it by the end, but maybe you didn't listen to the whole thing. I know I saw some comments saying, Matt. Rafa did predict Stefanos would be in the top 10 by the end of the year. He did. I hadn't read it. I just looked at the headline, started the show, and then I read the headline later in the podcast. So I'm telling you now, in case you missed it, I knew that. And if you didn't know it, now you know. Rafa predicted Stefanos would be top 10 by the end of the year back in January before the Australian Open. Pretty amazing. If you took someone as the 3rd favorite, I'd have to say Dominic Thiem after Joker and Nadal. But the wild cards are Tsitsipas and Fognini. Fognini is probably 5th or 6th because he can be brilliant or crash out early. Of course, Fognini is always, I don't want to say always, but when he's on, and it's not always, it's not even a whole lot, but when he's on, he can be quite astounding. So as we go to the French Open, I'll be very curious to see our draw, which our draw show will be Thursday or Friday morning early. It'd be very interesting to see Rafa's draw. At this point, like, he's earned it from all of his wins over the years. He had struggles. He wins Rome. He goes to the French Open as a favorite. He's basically erased all of that bad news. And look at it at Fabio Fognini. You peak in the beginning. You win Monte Carlo, and then you do okay since Monte Carlo going into the French Open. So if you're Rafa, which situation would you rather be in? The Fabio one or the Rafa one? Another big storyline coming out of Rome, and I'll say one more thing really quick. Djokovic is playing well. Like I said, he's getting better and better and better. But Rafa just exposed, and I said it before. As much as I praise Joker for getting better and better and better, he's not at his best. He doesn't look like a guy you can really, really favorite to win the French. Of course, he is able, as we saw last year, to go from looking pretty good and bring it up just in time to hold a big Grand Slam trophy. It will not shock me. But after eating the bagel and the breadstick, that has got to really hurt Joker mentally. Again, though, Joker, one of the most mentally tough players we've ever seen in the history of the sport. He can bounce back. And another thing, two more things we saw in Rome. Federer can play well. Rome is the most like the French Open. Federer can play well here. If he has a good draw, he can pick up some serious points. I'm the biggest Fed fan in the world, in El Mundo, the biggest Fed head, Que Grande. Don't know if that works. I don't think Roger can win the French Open, so I'm just putting that out there. If he has the right draw, I think he can get to the semifinals, and he will very likely lose to a Rafa or a Joker in a semifinal. It's not impossible for him to win, but it'll be a very special Federer performance if it were to happen. I hope it happens because it would be incredible. He would have to literally play incredible, or you'd have to see some kind of colossal meltdown from a Joker or a Rafa. So I hope we see it. A couple more things from Rome. One, Nick Kyrgios gone a little bit crazy. Did you hear that? What the heck was that sound? Sounds like a giant insect somewhere around. Mr. Goat, investigate that insect. Another thing to come out of Rome is that Nick Kyrgios is kind of crazy. Well, we already knew that. And more crazy is Nick Kyrgios goes to Wimbledon and hits with Andy Murray. So the good news is Andy Murray is getting better, but no one thinks he's going to be back anytime soon. But a lot of people are starting to say we will definitely see him back for sure. Now, remember, Janko Tipsarevic said we'll see him back for sure, and he will win a major again and be number one in the world again. Did Janko say that? By the way, Janko was playing today. And we might see Sasha Zverev and Janko Tipsarevic play pretty soon. I don't know if Andy Murray's going to come back like that. I don't think anyone else thinks that. But Nick Kyrgios might. If you remember, Nick Kyrgios was on that podcast, trashing everyone. Sounds pretty fond of Andy Murray and Roger Federer. Hitting with him. He posts this. What's going on? I'm hitting with Andy Murray today. That sounds like Andy Murray instead of Nick Kyrgios. Maybe they're friends because they kind of talk. Their voice is kind of similar. He says, get rid of the clay. Nick Kyrgios. This picture, you'll see it on the screen, sitting on the grass. Here's some Nick Kyrgios quotes from the practice outing at Wimbledon. I think this is the best tournament in the world. Look at this perfect green surface. Okay, we can agree with that, Nick. Get rid of the clay, man. Who likes the clay? It is so bad. Ooh, starting to lose me, Nick. I mean, it's not my favorite, but get rid of it? Rafa won't like that. Sir Andy Murray now. The fact that I'm here right now and I have to go to Paris in a couple days, he's complaining about having to go play in the French Open in Paris. Then he gives us the money line. The French Open sucks compared to this place. Then, in case you missed it, he goes, sucks. Absolute sucks. And the nice picture. Wow. Nick Kyrgios. Oh, that was horrible. That was the most horrible volley I've ever hit on this show, I think. Speaking of people who are having a time with things sucking, Sasha Zverev, he is only about 100 points ahead of Tsitsipas now. To give you an idea, Tsitsipas is closer to going over, leapfrogging over Zverev and Dominic Thiem in the points. He's closer. Put the rankings so you can see for yourself. Tsitsipas, it's more realistic to say Tsitsipas will jump them and be number 4 behind Federer than Dominic Thiem is to jump in front of Federer, right? Dominic Thiem, he's now 1,100 points, more than, away from 1,105. More than, for a Fed head, 5 points is more than 1,100 points away from Roger Federer. He has to defend finalist points at the French Open. Of course, if he wins the French Open, he still won't pass Federer. Am I right? Yeah, he's a finalist last year. 1,200 points versus 2,000 points. That's 800 points. Sorry, even if Federer loses first round, Dominic Thiem can't pass Roger Federer unless Thiem has a great Wimbledon and Federer has a horrible one. That's the only way. Tsitsipas, and I meant to look up, what did he do last year at the French? Did Tsitsipas do anything? I think he's like a second round, third round last year at best. I can't remember. Anyways, Tsitsipas, I don't think he did too great at the French Open last year. He has a better shot. It's more realistic for us to predict that he will pass Thiem and Zverev and get in that 4 spot. I mean, how amazing would that be? Sure, he didn't beat Federer and Nadal and Djokovic back-to-back in the Australian Open. But you don't have to do all that at this age, 20 years old, Stefanos. Plus, the guy's so darn handsome. So Sasha Zverev, who it seems like Nick Kyrgios' wish is that we have people not be best friends in tennis and not get along and have a little friction. We got it with Sasha Zverev and Tsitsipas, and that makes me excited for the future to see Tsitsipas and those that, come on, when a couple players hate each other and then they play, like, of course we're going to want to see Kyrgios and Djokovic play soon. We're going to see Kyrgios and Rafa play again soon after making it clear he doesn't really like them. So, Geneva, Switzerland, und die Schweiz, ATP 250, the Banca Arik Sturza, Geneva Open. Yeah, you ever heard of this tournament? Well, Sasha Zverev's there, and to give you an idea of where he is, he's going to play first up Ernie Gulbis, the pilot.
I really like doing these interviews because I get my childhood dream to be a pilot. I feel like a pilot right now.
Then he might play, and I hope he does, Janko Tipsarevic. Other seeds in here. Stan Wawrinka is there, who's looking for a little more as well. He's in the bottom of the draw. Fucsovics, the Manarino, Christian Garin. Look for him to do well here. I see him coming through that bottom half if I had to pick someone. Taro Daniel, he'll get through there. Kudla, he'll get through Kudla or Jari. Jari, that could be tough. 2 Chileans, player countrymen, but I'd put Green through there. Maybe a Stan Wawrinka win there. And does anyone think Sasha Zverev is going to win this tournament? Grigor Dimitrov also in the draw. So there's where Sasha Zverev is. He's clearly trying to throw up any points he can because it's pretty obvious he doesn't like Tsitsipas. He doesn't that's all he has right now. Tsitsipas is having such a better year than Sasha Zverev. I've been saying it for a while now. Tsitsipas is steadily destroying the Sasha Zverev reputation as the crowned prince of the future of tennis, right? He's the next gen king. King of the next gen. That's how we viewed him for the last year and a half or so. Tsitsipas tearing that apart. Last 2 years, really. Let's say, 2017 he was doing it. I mean, we've seen Sasha Zverev having results in 2016. Then Sasha beat Federer in 2016. Surgically repaired knee Federer version. But still, Sasha's been making waves for a long time. 3 years of that, and now all of a sudden Tsitsipas is ruining it all in less than a year. Just like Rafa ruined the hopes of outsiders who want to win the French Open. He ruined their hopes in less than 1 week in Rome. Also, we've got in France, Frankreich, Felix Auger-Aliassime, the 4 seed here, will play the Millman first. Put these draws on the screen, of course. El Chapo's there, Batista Agut. Some punk kid, Jan Vier, almost beat Gasquet, had match points today. Got to be scary for us fans of tennis who've been so in love with the big 3 for so long, or so used to it. Maybe you only like one of the 3. We've been so used to seeing them beat up on these same guys like Richard Gasquet. We don't want to see our usual beatdown buddies like Gasquet getting beat by new punk teenagers from the next gen, do we? Are we comfortable with this yet? The future is coming. Anyways, keep an eye out on this tournament just to see Felix Auger. He made some big splashes this year. And he's had some tough matches where he didn't play bad at all recently, but he's lost early every clay tournament he's been in since before we officially moved to clay, as in Monte Carlo. So looking to just get a couple wins, I imagine. Doesn't need to win this tournament. If Felix can just beat Millman, just one win will be nice before you go to the French Open as a seeded player, Auger. All right, that's it. Thank you for watching Coffee Break Tennis. I am off to the tennis courts to hit a couple balls, to teach a couple of tennis lessons. I want to give a big shout out, a big thank you to our latest Patreons. Of course, we very recently started a Patreon. If you want to help Coffee Break Tennis grow, go to patreon.com/Coffee Break Tennis. The link will be in the description below this box. It is an exciting time. It still stands, even though Rafa looks like a big favorite again. Have you ever been so excited to see a French Open draw, like in the last few years? I know I haven't. This is still going to be a very exciting tournament. Things are going to change a lot at this French Open. Like for the last few years, we haven't seen Roger Federer there. That's a big change. Somebody like a Tsitsipas is big predictions all around that he'll go pretty far. And since he has very little points to defend, he could be a new big four, you know? I know we're getting ahead with such a young player. It's hard to say this, but what if Tsitsipas is number 4? It's like you got a new big four. He's been one of the most consistent players of the year. Perhaps it's disrespectful to 1% Murray to say Stefanos' new big four, but it doesn't sound so far-fetched to me. Juan Martín del Potro has also announced himself as a big threat for the clay. We've got a lot of little storylines going on. It'll be interesting to see someone like a Stan Wawrinka, who is a former champion at the French Open, if he can get his game going. We got guys like Felix Auger and Chapeau, young, exciting players who would really love to get a little momentum going and win some matches at the French Open. It only takes a couple wins here and there to get the confidence to actually make a run. This is a very exciting time to watch Grand Slam tennis, and we will see you when we get our very exciting Grand Slam French Open draw on Thursday. See ya!